She waited at the shore for him. The pebbles on which she sat were small, round, and had various dull colors. In contrast, the grey stones where the waves crashed against in the cool morning wind were large and craggy. There was a small dock hovering a quarter-meter above the troubled water, a boat laid upside down on the pebble beach with the paddles next to it. There was no mast and therefore no sail. The weathering revealed that it hadn't been in use for at least a couple of months. Avery was staring into the distance, even though there was nothing but more water, a scary but fascinating view. He sat down next to her and noticed a small furry creature sitting on her lap and enjoying the warmth of her hands. "Where did you find that?" he asked, curiously eyeing the black cat with green eyes and white paws. "Excuse you, that's not a that, it's a she. And she just followed me here. Maybe she remembered me from last time." "How do you get along well with felines? It's a miracle." Avery chuckled and responded sarcastically, "Because you're always so attentive towards them, or what?" "I didn't do anything to make them hate me, but they always show dislike when I'm near." She took his hand and guided it towards the cat's back. "It appears to be a mutual thing. Also, what would you do if a creature 10 times as tall as you would stare at you with discontent every day? Dew rolled his eyes, but knew she was right. His fingers touched the black fur. It was soft and smooth. She let his hand from the neck of the cat down the spine, lifted it up and placed it back on the neck. Then she let go and had Dew stroke it on his own. The small creature was quite surprised by the change and moved a little, but it didn't take long until it had settled itself again. "How do you like it?" Avery wanted to know. He cocked his head to the side. "It feels nice," he admitted, "and it reminds me a little bit of your hair, but shorter." "I wish I were a cat," she randomly declared. "Why is that?" "Because they're so independent. They do pretty much everything they would like to. Sleep for hours, stroll around wherever and whenever. And they look cute." "You want to look cute?" Dew chuckled. "Only as a cat. Right now I'd prefer to look like a homeless beggar, but Sue said I look like a cunt." They sat for a while until the cat decided to leave. Avery retrieved the rope from the boat and began practice tying knots. "How was your night?" Dew asked while observing her swift finger movements. She groaned. "As terrible as last time. Aaron didn't check everyone's bag, so they sneaked in some kind of alcohol, so you can imagine the amount of nonsense they spat way beyond midnight, but Sue slept like a stone. Can I have your hands?" He stretched out his arms, not questioning what she wanted to do. The more surprised he was when she undid the knot from before and began wrapping it around his wrists multiple times. Meanwhile she asked, "How about you? How's that roommate of yours?" "Messy, but he seems okay as a person. He has a strange sense of humor and snores very loudly. We haven't talked a lot, though. We don't exactly have room to breathe. Maybe it's a cultural thing." She took the shorter end of the rope and wrapped it in between his wrists. He looked down at her work and asked, "What are you doing?" Avery knotted the two ends together. "Could you pull on it? I never did this before." He did. It was stable. Then she explained, "I just wanted to know if I observed it right so I can copy it if I need to." She began loosening it up again as Sue stepped next to them and looked down. "You into that or what?" Because the kitchen had no door, he could immediately see the girl crouching on the floor, while the black cat rubbed its little head against her legs. Traitor, Dew thought. The girl had curly black hair at shoulder length escaping into every direction. Her dress, which resembled an apron, ended just below her knees. This, he learned, was Tammy, the youngest of 3 children. Her mother and older sister were also working here, but her brother married and was therefore gone. Before he entered, she was talking in a pitched voice to engage with the fuzzy being, then she stopped in an instant. She held her head down, but it looked less as if she was staring at the cat and more like he was frightening her. It was just like the day before. She avoided his gaze and Dew didn't know why. He ignored it. There wasn't any importance in trying to read, the child thought. Maybe it was because of the scars that disfigured his face. In the castle there were several of those disfigured people, but this was a holiday area, and only wealthy people, who were more likely to look healthy as well, visited frequently. Dew found a note on the table describing the plan for midday. He got to work, setting up plates, throwing new wood into the oven, checking the amount of water available, and then he went through the stock like he did in the morning, but nothing was off, so he put the most important ingredients into the right position on the working surfaces. Because dew was done early, he sat down on the table and had his legs dangle in the air while waiting for Edith to arrive and give him permission to start. Tammy was still sitting on the ground. From time to time he noticed how she looked up at him, but diverted her gaze whenever he caught it. The cat had left her, and for no apparent reason had chosen to jump onto the same table as Dew sat on, and curl up next to him. He looked at it in confusion as it lay there, head on the table, eyes closed and tail under one of its front paws. Then he heard a quiet voice. "Mom said I'm not supposed to talk to old men, but I don't think you look all that old." Dew turned towards Tammy. She looked at him with her big button eyes, which had the color of roasted coffee beans. "How old are you?" she proceeded to ask. He was surprised by the sudden question. "I don't know," he responded truthfully, "but around 18, I assume." "Why do you not know?" "I'm an orphan," Dew sparkly responded, even though he didn't know if his father even was a Merling or just some guy who— "Oh!" Tammy sucked in her lip and stared downwards again. "Do you know why your mother said that?" Dew wanted to know, even though he could guess the answer. How old was this girl? Around 10, maybe. Or younger. The ages melted into one another when it came to appearance, between the age of 7 and 15, in his opinion. She made a concentrated face and explained, "She says they lie a lot, and that they can tell me a lot of things they want to give me, but they don't really do that." Maybe she wasn't 10. Perhaps 8 was more accurate. And her mother probably thought he was a liar or a typical nice guy, perhaps out of experience. So he asked, "Does your mother have a husband?" "No, but she had 3 different boyfriends when she was living in Haven, and they were all liars." He understood. Huge promises, no commitment. "If your mother has any concerns towards me, you can tell her I am married to my longtime friend." Tammy's big eyes grew even bigger. "Is she pretty?" She wanted to know, not the response Dew had anticipated. "I think she's pretty. Do you remember Avery from a month ago? She talked about you." "The dragon boy who was actually a dragon girl?" she asked. "Exactly." "I remember her." She nodded enthusiastically. "That's my partner," he explained, and maybe she would have exploded if it would have been anatomically possible. Luckily it was not. To anyone but him, it would have been obvious that Tammy would start talking to him. A lot. He didn't feel all that comfortable being asked things about himself by someone he considered a stranger. His intention was just to clear his name, not to make an acquaintance. At least he managed to learn 1 or 2 fun facts. She told him that she had met Avery through the cat, and they had bonded over the appreciation of those small furry creatures. Tammy's mother didn't seem all that pleased with her daughter's sudden fondness of the stranger, and Dew feared she would slap him out of overprotectiveness. But she didn't. After the last shift was done, the girl stayed and helped with the cleaning, and the black cat and another one in grey followed around while she flew from one location to another. It made the atmosphere feel very lively to Dew, an additional stress factor to him, but in the end he couldn't blame the child. He used to be very much the same as soon as he had gotten comfortable walking on land. Before he had done the same underwater, especially in the first few days after having changed the lake locations. After she was done with all she was allowed to do, she seated herself on a table and watched Dew as he went through everything again to finish. "How does the castle look like? Is it pretty? Is it big?" Tammy demanded to know. "The areas for the important people are very pretty, with nice curtains, pictures, furnishing, and it's very clear. And yes, it is very big. Mom said there is a big throne room somewhere. Have you seen it?" "No, but Avery did, and she said it was a very long room with a throne at the end, right before a colorful glass window with mythical scenes. I saw the courtroom once, and I've been to the king's office and in the portrait corridor," he told her. She was astonished. All she probably knew was this one place, and most likely only the right side for the workers. Then she continued, "Did you ever see the princess? I saw her once through the window, I think." "I see her almost every day, but I'm not allowed to stare because that would be rude." "Do you think she's pretty? I think she's pretty. Does she wear beautiful dresses?" "She does wear dresses, but not that often." Du wondered why. A girl of her status could have almost every piece of clothing she wanted, yet she chose typical but casual menswear most of the time. Then he declared, "She looks noble enough, a lot more sophisticated than you think of a 15-year-old girl." "If I were a princess, I would wear very long baby blue dresses with puffy sleeves and a lot of jewelry. Like this. I would wear something like this, but with gold." Tammy pointed at Du's chest where the stone of his necklace was located. She jumped off to the table and tiptoed over to him. "Can I wear it? Just for one moment, please," she begged, and her coffee eyes bored themselves through his heart. He took it off and handed it to the overly excited girl. "Okay, but just for a second. It means a lot to me." Du noticed he had been quicker than the night before, and he felt less beat up. He assumed the reasons to be the nap he took during the afternoon and that he didn't have to do all that much physical exercise. All he noticed from the walk the day before was the manageable amount of soreness in his legs and back. As he had promised, he wasn't all that untrained, contrary to what Sue had thought of him. There was a little bit of light outside which barely made its way through the tight corridors as he went upstairs. Skipping over the wooden planks, which he had learned would produce noise, he made his way towards his room. Even through the door he could hear the snoring. At that moment he reconsidered whether he really wanted to go to sleep there now, but there was no other good spot for him. Maybe the fireplace? Or... All his belongings were in the right place when he made it back to his bed. He placed his uniform on top of the chest, rolled up his blanket and squeezed the pillow to a flat square, which wasn't all that hard with the little filling it had. Then he left with it. The door was almost immediately opened when he knocked, and he was let inside. Sue wasn't there because she had to take the first half of night patrol in the courtyard, so Avery told him as he noticed one of the beds to be empty. Avery herself would do the same, but for the following night, therefore the plans for the next afternoon were already settled. Sleeping. And because she didn't eat, nobody would bother her unless it was a general who insisted on playing a game of cards or marble with someone. Du placed his items on Avery's bed, threw the blanket over his shoulders and sat down right next to her. It was less space than they had at the castle, but it would be enough. "I talked to the girl you told me about," Du started the conversation. "She's so dreamy." "Did she also ask you about all the things you have seen in the castle?" She chuckled. He nodded and grinned softly. Tammy apparently couldn't get enough insights on the false dreamland of fleeting wealth and carelessness. Then Du wanted to know, "Did you ever dream of stuff like that in your time in the children's mansion?" "To be honest, not really," she admitted. "I only learned about the concept of money when our mother put my brother and me into Bota." Then the hybrid reached out for a small object on her commode. It was a small wooden horse. There were no noticeable details or anything delicate about its appearance. It was a block with 4 angular pyramids for legs, a longer part reaching upwards with a little box on top with 2 triangles for ears. "What did you dream of them?" "Silly things like world justice. Most of the new kids being cared for were injured when they arrived. My mother always tried to teach everyone to turn the world into a better place, but..." She laughed dryly and held the tiny horse before her face. "I strayed very far from the path, didn't I? How ironic," Avery ended. "Maybe after we leave," Du suggested. "After we leave, I want to do nothing more than leave this earth with you. There's no justice to be persecuted, and trying to do so will only have you end up broken like my mother. After countless of years of trying to save every child she comes across, she forgot taking care of her own children. For once I can be glad not to be good enough for her, at least then I don't have to carry on that burden. Only in case she is still alive, who knows? The world would be a better place off without her, and so would she." He wrapped his arms around her as she spoke and watched as her fingers played with the little figure. Du understood what she meant, still he partially disagreed in silence. "Where did this toy come from?" he asked. She had told him before, but she would have to tell him again, if only for him to hear her voice. "My brother loved these little figurines. He owned around 14 in different shapes, most of them were horses. On his birthday, Mom would ask him what he wanted, and he always wanted another wooden toy. So he got one. They were handmade, we never knew by whom, but it didn't matter because he was happy to play. Would you say it was useless to have him have this gift? He provocatively asked. What? Of course not. Why do you say that? Because he'll be sad at some point afterwards, so why be happy if it doesn't last forever? Avery sighed, then laughed defeatedly as she understood the comparison. I get it. You win, or should I say Josephine wins. It sounds like something you picked up from her. Now tell me about your fantasies, she demanded. He had to think for a moment. What did he ever dream of as a child? The next day, he replied matter-of-factly, finding food, exploring the bottom of the lake for new things. Something shiny or a rope. I found a shovel one, that was a highlight. Sometimes I dreamed about having someone to play with because doing the same 2 things every day. I never thought very far. She patted his head before running her fingers through his hair. He didn't know if it was supposed to be a gesture of comfort. And what about lately? He could hear the tiredness in her voice, even though Avery tried to suppress it. His honest answer to the question would be, I have a hit list and I'm desperate to act on it, but that would have concerned or disturbed her, so he replied, I want a comfortable cave next to a lake far from society, and you don't have to stay awake. You're already dozing off again.